At a bustling local market, an elderly man struggled to push a heavy cart, attracting little more than passing glances, until Keanu Reeves stepped in and changed everything. What he did next will leave you inspired. Where are you watching from? Share in the comments below, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more stories that inspire and uplift. Welcome to Motivation for Success, your go-to channel for tales of kindness, courage, and compassion. Post your thoughts in the comments, and stay tuned as we share the rest of this incredible moment with you. Morning light streamed through thin drapes in a modest little house on a nondescript street. The neighborhood was quiet, only the distant hum of cars on a main road hinted at the bustle of the waking world. Inside that house, Arthur rose gingerly from his creaky bed, each joint protesting the start of another long day. He paused for a moment in front of a mirror, running a hand over thinning white hair. He was in his early 90s, a small-framed man whose eyes still held sparks of life, though etched with years of hardship. Arthur shuffled down a short hallway into the kitchen. The walls were decorated with faded pictures, anniversaries, a few holiday gatherings, and the younger faces of people who lived in his memories. One photo displayed him in a crisp uniform, decades ago, standing beside a massive ship. Another showed him laughing with friends who had long since passed. In the adjoining room sat Elaine, Arthur's wife of more than 60 years. Today, Elaine peered at a single photograph on the table, turning it over in her trembling hands. She did this nearly every morning now. Sometimes she remembered her own face in the picture, more often, she did not. Her battle with Alzheimer's had left her memory fractured, and she spent her days in a hazy in-between. Arthur approached slowly, placing a tender hand on her shoulder. "Good morning, Elaine." She lifted her eyes, searching his face with a flicker of recognition that melted away almost as soon as it came. Arthur repeated a reassuring smile he'd perfected over the years. He didn't expect her to respond. It was enough that she was there, that he still had this moment with her. Every morning, Arthur prepared a simple breakfast for the two of them, instant oatmeal or scrambled eggs, depending on what groceries he could afford. Their pantry was sparse. Elaine required multiple medications to manage her condition, and those costs, along with the usual bills, devoured their limited savings. Arthur took a small portion for himself, then gently coaxed Elaine to eat. Sometimes, she cooperated. Other times, she stared blankly, lost in confusion. Arthur finished the last sip of his coffee, washed the mug in the sink, and set it upside down on the drying rack. Bills waited on the table, each envelope tinted with ominous red stamps indicating their overdue status. His gaze drifted toward them, but he quickly looked away as though they might swallow him whole if he stared too long. Before leaving for work, he knelt by Elaine's armchair. "I'll be back soon," he whispered. Her eyes rested on his face, but no recognition sparked. In a soft voice, she murmured something he couldn't quite make out, and then she turned back to her photograph. Arthur sighed. He pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead and rose, each movement slow and deliberate. Outside, the world was fully awake. A few neighbors walked dogs, kids ran to catch a school bus, and a couple across the street watered their front lawn. Arthur waved to them politely as he passed, though they barely noticed him. He climbed into his weather-beaten sedan, only a single back door still open properly, and eased out of the driveway. Arthur worked at Fairview Market, a neighborhood grocery store with a sprawling parking lot perpetually teeming with cars. It was the kind of place where shoppers scrambled for deals and hurried in and out, rarely making eye contact with the employees. Arthur's job was to gather and organize the trolleys, or shopping carts, scattered across the asphalt. For some, it seemed like a trivial job. But for Arthur, it paid just enough to make ends meet, barely. The hours were long, the physical demands growing heavier by the day, and each shift drained more of his diminishing energy. Yet, he never complained. He accepted it as the only way to keep food on his table and medication in Elaine's cabinet. He arrived at Fairview Market that morning, nursing a familiar tightness in his lower back. Grabbing a worn fluorescent vest from the front seat, he slipped it on and stepped onto the asphalt. The store manager, Mr. Grayson, was already on duty, checking the time on his phone. He gave Arthur a quick nod that could have been interpreted as either greeting or impatience. It was often hard to tell. Arthur understood his role. He took a deep breath and began making slow laps across the lot to gather scattered carts. Every few minutes, he stopped to wipe sweat from his brow or to rest a moment, pressing a hand against his knee for stability. Each day was a fresh challenge, summertime heat or winter chills, impatient drivers honking, sometimes even the store's own staff complaining carts weren't organized fast enough. About an hour into the shift, Arthur was rounding up a long row of carts near the entrance. Mr. Grayson approached, wearing that same unwavering expression. "We need these cleared faster, Arthur," he barked. "People are waiting inside, and we can't have them standing around." Arthur managed a polite nod. "I'll do my best, sir. My knee's bothering me a bit, but I'm trying to keep up." The manager sighed with exasperation. "I get it, Arthur, but we're short-handed. Step it up." Though he maintained his composure, Arthur felt a sting. He wanted to reply, to defend himself, to say he was doing everything he could, but he held back. Quarreling never helped. By now, he had learned that humility and endurance were his best tools to get through days like this. A loud, distinct rumble resounded from the entrance to the parking lot, a motorcycle engine, deep and resonant. Heads turned to see who was arriving. The rider, cloaked in a black jacket, eased the bike into a free space near the far corner, away from the chaotic swarm of rushing customers. As he pulled off his helmet, dark hair tumbled free, revealing that the rider was none other than Keanu Reeves. Most people in that parking lot were too busy to notice or believe their eyes, but a few did double takes. Keanu Reeves, the Hollywood star, had shown up in this unassuming locale unannounced. He removed his sunglasses and scanned the area, as though searching for something specific. His gaze locked on an elderly man in a fluorescent vest struggling with an unwieldy row of shopping carts. Keanu took a moment to observe. While some might have marched into the store with a sense of celebrity entitlement, Keanu Reeves moved with calm purpose. He glanced around as if ensuring no one would swarm him for photos. Then he began walking toward Arthur, who was busy wrestling carts into alignment. Arthur, so immersed in the task at hand, did not notice who approached him. He was too focused on maneuvering a row of mismatched carts. A few had wobbly wheels squeaking in protest. His knee ached fiercely. Just as he was about to push again, a voice cut through the commotion. "Need some help?" Arthur turned, nearly dropping the cart handle. Standing before him was Keanu Reeves, politely smiling. It took Arthur several seconds to grasp what he was seeing. Keanu Reeves. "Here. I'm fine, thank you," Arthur managed. His eyes darted around, half expecting someone to jump out with a camera for a prank. "I can handle it." "I'm sure you can," Keanu said gently, "but I'd still like to help." Before Arthur could form another protest, Keanu wrapped his hands around the metal bar and began guiding the carts alongside him. The old man swallowed and decided it was pointless to argue with a stranger, famous or not, who simply wanted to lend a hand. Together, they slowly steered the carts to a holding area near the store entrance. When the row of carts was finally parked, Arthur stood aside to catch his breath. His heart pounded from the unrelenting effort. Keanu looked at him with genuine concern. "You look like you could use a moment to rest," Keanu remarked. "Would you like something to drink?" Arthur pressed a trembling hand against his chest, nodding weakly. "That'd be nice, thank you." Keanu darted into the store, returning moments later with 2 bottles of chilled water. They moved to a quieter corner by a small patch of landscaped bushes, away from the bustle of people entering and exiting. Arthur drank slowly, grateful for the respite. "Thank you," he said once more, a bit more composed. "I don't know why you're here, but I appreciate your kindness." Keanu shrugged, flashing a disarming smile. Maybe we both ended up at the right place at the right time. Name's Keanu. You are? Arthur. Keanu nodded. Nice to meet you, Arthur. Do you do this every day? Arthur swallowed hard, thinking of Elaine at home. 6 days a week. Some weeks, 7 if they need me. I need the hours. Keanu studied the older man's face. If it's not too personal, why push yourself so hard? You should be enjoying retirement. Arthur exhaled, letting the question hang in the air. 1,000 thoughts rushed through his mind: Elaine's medications, overdue bills, the creeping fear of eviction. But he tried to keep his answer simple: I have someone who needs me. My wife, she isn't well. Her medical costs are high, and our savings are gone. This job is all I have to keep us afloat. A subtle heaviness tinted Keanu's features. I'm sorry to hear that, he said softly. Alzheimer's? Arthur's eyes widened. How'd you know? Keanu offered a fleeting, half-smile. I've seen that look before. Friends, family of friends. Let's just say I've heard similar stories. They stood in silence for a moment, water bottles in hand, as the swirl of shoppers passed in a blur of color and clamor behind them. Arthur thought about how unusual it was to share his burdens with a stranger, especially a famous one. Something about Keanu's presence felt comforting, disarming. It's been rough, Arthur finally confessed. Elaine doesn't remember our life the way she used to. Sometimes, she doesn't recognize me. But I keep going because she's my wife, and I promise to be there for her. Keanu gently placed a hand on Arthur's shoulder. That's love, Arthur. Doing something even when it's the hardest thing in the world. In the distance, Mr. Grayson's voice rang out from across the parking lot, Arthur. Break's over soon, we need those carts in line for the afternoon rush. Arthur winced. Guess I better get back to it. He passed a regretful look at Keanu, half expecting the celebrity to vanish like a mirage. Thank you again for the help, and the water. Keanu gave him a thoughtful nod. Mind if I stick around and help a little more? A faint flicker of surprise danced across Arthur's tired eyes. If you want to. I'd never say no to help, but I can't pay you or anything. Keanu smiled wryly. Don't worry about that. Consider me your volunteer for the day. And so, the strangest scene unfolded in Fairview Market's parking lot. Passers-by occasionally stopped in their tracks, attempting to process the sight of Keanu Reeves, one of the world's most recognized actors, pushing grocery carts alongside an old man. Some took out phones to snap pictures or film short clips. Others were too hurried to care. A few approached for an autograph, but Keanu politely declined, redirecting them with a calm smile, let's talk later. Right now, I'm helping my friend. With Keanu's assistance, the cart wrangling job became lighter for Arthur. Periodically, Keanu would break away to chat with employees. Arthur couldn't help but notice that Mr. Grayson treated Keanu with a warmth and respect rarely granted to staff. Perhaps it was the aura of celebrity. Arthur tried not to overthink it. They worked in tandem for a few hours, making easy conversation. Arthur even cracked a joke or two about remembering the days when he could push a row of carts twice as big as this one without so much as a sore knee. Keanu seemed genuinely delighted by Arthur's stories. He asked about Arthur's time in the Navy, about Elaine's younger years, about the city they lived in decades ago. Eventually, late afternoon arrived, and Arthur's shift came to a close. Although physically drained, he found himself unexpectedly energized by the friendly company. He removed his vest and folded it under one arm. Standing next to Keanu by the motorcycle, he wasn't quite sure how to say goodbye. Thank you again, Keanu, Arthur said, voice thick with gratitude. What you did for me today, it means a lot. Keanu patted him gently on the back. I'm just glad I could be of some help. Are you heading home now? Arthur nodded. Yes, my wife will be waiting. She might not realize I'm even gone, but I always like to be there before dinner to help her." Keanu Reeves offered Arthur a handshake, then pulled him into a brief, gentle hug. Arthur felt a lump in his throat. He couldn't remember the last time someone had hugged him so kindly. With a final wave, Arthur made his way to his old sedan, carefully starting the engine and leaving the lot. Yet this was not the end of the story. Even as Arthur drove off, Keanu stood in the parking lot, helmet under his arm, watching the sedan vanish into the sea of traffic. An idea had taken root in Keanu's mind, one he couldn't ignore. Yes, he had given Arthur physical help for a day, but what about tomorrow? And the day after? He climbed back onto his motorcycle, the engine thundering to life. As he left, he cast a final look at Fairview Market. His eyes narrowed with resolve. Arthur's situation reminded him of how precarious life could be for people who had poured their hearts into service, whether for family, country, or community, and who received so little in return. That evening, in a quiet hotel room miles away, Keanu Reeves sat at a small table, laptop open. He made calls, sent emails, asked questions. He knew money alone wouldn't fix everything, but it could provide some much-needed relief. People who recognized his name were happy to expedite requests, those who didn't simply treated him as a thoughtful benefactor. He reached out to a local philanthropic group to discover if they could offer assistance for older adults in financial straits. He researched medical coverage that might help with Alzheimer's treatment or other forms of in-home care. Each keystroke was fueled by the memory of Arthur's worn face and trembling hands. And, though it wasn't typically in his nature to publicize charitable acts, he made sure to keep his name out of official documents as much as possible. Finally, he called Fairview Market and requested a conversation with Mr. Grayson. Surprised, the manager sputtered some pleasantries, unsure what to say. "Mr. Grayson," Keanu began with polite directness. "I'd like to support Arthur in a discreet way. I'll cover a bonus for him, enough for him to pay his bills for several months. I'd appreciate it if you could pass it along as if it were from the company, or however you think would be best. You don't have to mention me." The manager paused, clearly astonished by the request. "That's extremely generous, Mr. Reeves. Arthur is, well, he's a special case. But I'm worried he might not accept a gift like that." "That's why it has to look like it's from the store," Keanu insisted gently. "An extra incentive or a recognition of his hard work. He'll accept it if it's linked to his efforts." Mr. Grayson agreed, though he was still reeling. Keanu thanked him, leaving instructions to keep the donation anonymous. "There's one more thing," Keanu added. "Could you find out where he gets his wife's medication? I'd like to cover a portion of that, too." The conversation ended. Keanu closed his laptop and exhaled. He ran a hand through his hair, letting a wave of relief wash over him. The plan set in motion was simple but powerful, a financial cushion for Arthur, so he could reduce his work hours or pay for in-home care for Elaine. It wouldn't solve everything, nothing could restore Elaine's memories, but it would alleviate the crushing burden that hung over them. 2 days later, Arthur arrived at Fairview Market feeling a bit more stiffness in his knees than usual. He had to pause, taking a moment to steady himself on his cane, something he'd only recently started using. As he signed in for his shift, Mr. Grayson approached him with an envelope in hand. "Arthur," the manager began, his demeanor noticeably softer, "the store wants to recognize your dedicated work. You've been here through thick and thin. So, we put together something extra for you." Arthur eyed the envelope warily. "What is it?" "Just open it," Mr. Grayson said, awkwardly patting his shoulder. Inside the envelope, Arthur found a check along with a typed note. The amount was several $1,000s, enough to pay off his most pressing bills and possibly cover a few months of Elaine's medication. Arthur's hands began to tremble. This can't be right," he breathed. The note read, "Arthur, we appreciate your tireless contributions. You've gone above and beyond to support our customers. Here's something to show our gratitude. Thank you for all you do, you're part of our family here at Fairview Market. Tears misted Arthur's eyes. I don't understand, he whispered. Mr. Grayson cleared his throat. The store decided to celebrate your years of service. Also, there might be more to come. We've arranged a discount on certain prescriptions at a local pharmacy. So, if your wife needs medicine, you'll pay much less. Think of it as a well-deserved perk. Arthur was too stunned to respond. He wanted to question further, but words failed him. He carefully closed the envelope, nodding in silent gratitude. That evening, Arthur sat in his small living room, the check still resting on the table. Elaine was in her usual chair, gazing at the photograph of them from decades ago. Arthur approached her softly, kneeling beside her legs. In a voice quivering with emotion, he said, "Elaine, we're going to be okay." Elaine's eyes flicked to his face. Once again, that momentary flicker of recognition sparked. She reached out, placing her hand atop his. For an instant, he thought he saw the Elaine he knew, the one who used to sing in the kitchen while cooking, the one who danced with him in the living room on their anniversary. He whispered, "A kindness from someone. I don't know who. But they helped us." Elaine's lips curved into a faint smile, and she squeezed his hand. The old house felt different that night, lighter, safer. Arthur realized this was the first time in years he'd gone to bed without dread gnawing at his thoughts. Somewhere miles away, Keanu Reeves sat alone in a small cafe, sipping a simple herbal tea. He liked these unpretentious places where nobody paid him much attention, where he could reflect on life without the weight of celebrity pressing in. He checked his phone for any messages from Mr. Grayson but found none. That was okay, he didn't need details. All that mattered was that Arthur got the help he deserved. He smiled to himself, recalling the old man's determined stance, the stoic way he pushed through pain for the sake of someone he loved. Keanu found it humbling, an example of true dedication. Often, it was the everyday hero who taught us the most about persistence and heart. When people recognized Keanu Reeves on the street or in that cafe and tried to approach, they sometimes caught a reflective expression on his face. In those moments, he'd shift back to a modest grin. If they asked for a picture, he often obliged, but his mind wandered back to Arthur's story. He hoped that, if anything, the small gesture he'd made could give that couple some measure of peace. The days flowed into weeks. Arthur used the unexpected financial boost to pay overdue bills, repair his rickety old sedan, and purchase a better wheelchair for Elaine. He also arranged for part-time in-home care, which gave him a precious few hours of rest. Elaine's Alzheimer's didn't vanish, of course, but the daily stress that weighed on Arthur's shoulders eased considerably. One sunny afternoon, while organizing a box of old mementos, Arthur discovered a record player they'd nearly forgotten about. He rummaged around until he found a favorite vinyl record, a love ballad from the days of their youth. Carefully, he set it on the turntable. A soft melody filled the living room. As the song played, Arthur approached Elaine. She looked at him, that same uncertain stare, but Arthur gently lifted her hand. "Do you remember our dance?" he asked in a shaky voice. Elaine's lips parted, as though she might speak. Instead, she managed a faint nod, or maybe it was just her head tilting. Arthur held her gently, guiding her through slow, careful steps. She followed as best she could, leaning on his shoulder. For a fleeting minute, time rewound, they were young again, swirling in each other's arms, the rest of the world at bay. In that moment, Arthur silently thanked the unnamed benefactor who had given him the chance to share these peaceful days with Elaine. He suspected it was Keanu Reeves, who else could it be? Yet, no one confirmed it. Arthur only heard rumors from co-workers about some anonymous donation that Mr. Grayson had facilitated. Occasionally, bits of the story trickled out, a shopper who'd seen Keanu Reeves helping an elderly man in the parking lot, a rumor that an actor had asked Fairview Market to keep a donation under wraps. But these accounts never turned into huge headlines. They lived as quiet whispers, overshadowed by the daily churn of celebrity news that favored bigger, more glamorous drama. If anyone confronted Keanu about it in an interview or on social media, he simply brushed it off with a light-hearted shrug. "I just saw someone who needed a hand. That's all." He never elaborated, never claimed credit. For him, the real reward was the knowledge that he had, in some measure, lifted a burden from Arthur's shoulders. So, what's the moral of this story? It might be the reminder that kindness can come from unexpected places, sometimes from a Hollywood star, sometimes from a stranger you'll never see again. It might be the testament to how unwavering love drives ordinary people like Arthur to do extraordinary things, day after day, without applause or recognition. Or it could be the simple truth that lending a hand costs us little but means the world to those in need. Wherever you are, take a moment to reflect on those around you who might be struggling in silence. Think about how even a small gesture, offering a ride, listening to a story, or buying an extra bag of groceries, can become a lifeline for someone. We might not all have the resources of a movie star, but we do have the capacity to see, to listen, and to care. Where are you watching from? We'd love to know. Tell us in the comments. Have you ever encountered a situation where a simple act of compassion changed everything? We invite you to share those experiences below. By doing so, you might inspire someone else to take that leap of kindness today. And if you found this story meaningful, please subscribe to our channel for more tales of everyday heroes, heartfelt moments, and stories reminding us that a single good deed can ripple outward in unimaginable ways. One evening, Arthur felt a surge of courage and decided to drive to the location where he suspected Keanu Reeves might appear again. He had heard murmurs that Keanu sometimes returned to Fairview Market on his motorcycle, quietly picking up groceries or simply enjoying the anonymity of a calm parking lot. Arthur waited in his car for half an hour, but the star never showed up. In a way, Arthur felt relieved. Maybe it was better to leave things unspoken. The gift Arthur had received, the knowledge that people still cared, was enough. He smiled, started his engine, and headed home, eager to see Elaine. That night, he helped her take her medication, told her old stories until she dozed off, and fell asleep in his own chair with gratitude in his heart. Days later, as Keanu Reeves wrapped up another trip through town, he rode his motorcycle past the corner of Fairview Market. The place was busy as usual, but he couldn't spot Arthur among the rows of carts. He pulled over briefly, scanning the scene. Perhaps Arthur was on a break, or perhaps he'd taken a day off, something that, thanks to the financial relief, was now an option. Keanu closed his eyes for a second, letting the evening sun warm his face. In that moment, he felt the beauty of small mercies. He had done his part. Whether or not Arthur ever found out the identity of his benefactor didn't matter, the outcome did. With a soft sigh and a gentle twist of the throttle, Keanu Reeves slipped back into the flow of traffic, helmet glinting under the sinking sun. The hum of the engine was steady, like a heartbeat. And in that hum was a song of quiet contentment, a silent testament to how one act of kindness, if done in earnest, can radiate hope far beyond its starting point. Consider spreading kindness today. Whether it's helping a neighbor carry groceries, donating to a local shelter, or simply offering a sincere compliment to someone who looks down, no gesture is too small. We can all be part of a chain reaction that brightens someone's world, and our own. Thank you for watching and reading this story. Remember to subscribe for more inspiring narratives that celebrate empathy, perseverance, and the everyday heroics happening all around us. Let's keep showing the world what true compassion looks like, one act at a time.